Hi there and welcome. You're about to watch a Lakehead International live webinar. It is a great way to explore what Lakehead University is all about. In this session, you'll hear insights and stories from Lakehead professors, staff, and current students. While watching, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. For now, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you again for joining for another Lakehead International live session today. So we are going to be covering a major topic that is everything that you need to know about Canadian student visa and how to navigate the process with confidence. My name is Hardika Narayankar, and I'm the part of the international team here at Lakehead University based on our Thunder Bay campus. And I'm excited to be joined today by two of the International Student Services advisors. They work closely with students every single day, and they'll be sharing their experience and answering your questions as we go. So let's just start with a round of introduction. So I'll just let you both introduce yourself.
Thanks, Hardika. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Malvin, and as Hardika said, I'm one of the International Student Advisors. I'm also a RISIA, which is a Regulated International Student Immigration Advisor. We have 4 of us total, and I'm excited that you could join us today. This is an exciting part of your process to learn about applying for your visa, and we really look forward to welcoming you to Thunder Bay, or Aurelia, if we have any Aurelia students on the call. And I hope you enjoy the webinar, and I'll pass it off to Jen.
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hay. I'm also one of your international student advisors and a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Both Sarah and I are born and raised here in Thunder Bay. We love the outdoors, we love our city, and we look forward to sharing all of our wonderful experiences with you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Jen. Just to highlight this for everyone, both of them are licensed immigration advisors. That means that they are officially authorized to support you with your study permit and also visa process. So having experts like them on your side is one of the ways Lakehead makes sure that you're supported from the moment that you apply right through your arrival in Canada. So we'll be taking a quick look and covering today these things, which is what a Canadian study permit is and when you should apply. We'll be talking about how your Lakehead admission status affects your next steps, the documents that you'll need, including biometrics and medical exams, what to know if you're doing co-op or plan to work while studying, also processing times and what to do if you're bringing family members with you. So we have got a lot of ground to cover, so let's just dive in. So let's just start with the basics. What is a study permit? So a study permit is a document that the government of Canada gives you that lets you study at a designated learning institution. Lakehead University is one of those approved institutions. So every international student needs this permit before coming to Canada. If you're planning to join us from outside the country, you'll have to submit your study permit application before you travel. So once it's approved, you're officially set to begin your program at Lakehead. And the question that we hear all the time is, when should you apply for your study permit? So let's just talk about that in the next slide. You can only begin your study permit application after Lakehead has reviewed your file and given you an official admission decision. So when that decision is made, your application status will shift to one of the few options that are listed here. So it could be admitted unconditionally, which means that you have met every requirement and your offer is final. Admitted conditionally, which means that you're accepted, but you still need to submit a few items like your final transcripts, any kind of English course, or proof that you completed your degree. The important thing to know is that both conditional and unconditional offers can be used to start your study permit application. Now, if your status shows incomplete, that means that something is missing from your file and that you'll need to upload those documents before anything can move forward. If it says pending review, then it means that your file is complete, but admissions has not made a decision yet. And if it says refused, then unfortunately it means that your application did not meet the requirements at this stage. Now, for anyone in the incomplete, pending, or refused categories, you're not eligible to apply for a study permit yet. which means that you need to work it out with the admissions team to clear whatever it is that is holding up. And you do not need to worry if you see a refusal, because sometimes it's just like one document or certain requirements that are missing that needs to be fixed. So once it's addressed, you may be able to reapply, but also always double check with our admissions team first. Now, once you're officially admitted, here's what you'll need for your study permit application. You'll need a valid passport, your official letter of acceptance from Lakehead, proof of financial support to show you that you can cover tuition and living costs, a PAL, which is a provincial attestation letter, which most applicants now need, and also any kind of country-specific documents required for your own region. You may also be asked to complete biometrics or medical exam depending on the country of residence and your program. For graduate applicants, the same rules apply. You can only apply for your study permit after you have been officially admitted. And starting January 1st, if you're planning to attend a public institution, you don't need a PAL or a territorial attestation letter when applying for study permit. With that, I will let Sarah talk about the next slide, which is if someone's already in Canada, what to do.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
going to take this slide
Okay.
on. So if you're already in Canada, it looks like most of you are applying from outside of Canada, but if anyone here today is from inside of Canada, you can apply for your study permit as well. In the first set of questions when you start your application, it's going to ask what country you're residing in. So that means where you're physically living and what country is your citizenship. So this will determine where your application will be sent to. If you are currently studying at another institution in Canada, you will be submitting a new application or an extension inside Canada, and this is done through the GC Key account. If you are a visitor in Canada, IRCC does recommend leaving Canada and applying for the study permit from your home country. If you decide you do want to apply from inside of the country, you still submit the application as if you're outside of the country, and just be prepared that once a decision is made, you will have to leave the country to actually have that permit printed at the port of entry. And this cannot be done as a flagpole or a land border. So IRCC really discourages visitors from applying for that study permit from inside of Canada. However, you can do so, just making sure you're still noting your own country of residence. And then if you're a worker in Canada, you would be changing your status to a student. In most of these situations, you will still require a PAL letter, of course, unless you're applying after January 1st as a graduate student.
Thank you, Jen, for that. So now we'll be moving on to how to get a PAL, which is Provincial Attestation Letter. So this is one of the newest requirements for study permit application, and it's a key part of the process for most students. So here's how it works. So the step one is accept your offer of admission. If you're an undergraduate student, you'll do this through OUAC or your Lakehead student portal. Graduate students accept their offers through the same graduate application portal they used to apply. Step two is after you accept your offer, our team will send you a PAL request form. That means that you'll enter a few details and upload your documents, typically your passport and some basic information. Step three is to pay the PAL confirmation deposit. This payment has to be completed before we can issue your PAL. It's non-refundable unless your visa is refused. Step four is once everything is submitted and the deposit is paid, we'll issue your provincial attestation letter. Make sure you review it closely. Double check your name, address, any kind of spelling, because IRCC will verify all of those when reviewing your application. Now, a quick tip, if you can always find the latest details on our PAL webpage. And if you ever need any help, you can reach out to our team directly. This is the URL that we have put it on the slide. Now, here's how the deposits work. Undergraduate students, if you have already paid your $500 confirmation deposit, you'll need to top up $4,500. If you haven't paid anything yet, you can pay the full $5,000 at once. Now, graduate students, if you're already paid $2,000, you'll need to add 3,000 more. And if you haven't paid anything yet, then you'll also pay $5,000 in total. The single payment covers both your offer confirmation and your PAL requirement. Now, for those of you who have already received your letter of acceptance, congratulations. That's a major achievement and the first big step towards joining us at Lakehead University. Now that you know where to start and what you'll need, let's just move into the next part and what happens after you submit your application, a study permit application is submitted. Now I'll let one of the advisors speak about the next steps.
Thanks, Hartika. So now we'll talk about actually applying for that study permit application. There are quite a few steps and some documents that you're going to gather and prepare. And of course, you need to create an account through the IRCC website. This here on the right side is a copy of what the study permit looks like. This will actually be issued when you enter Canada. So you'll show your approval message to the port of entry, the CBSA officers, and then they will actually print this permit when you enter the country. So of course, there are quite a few steps, as I've mentioned. First step is to make sure that you have what you need and access to everything before you get started. You need to have a scanner or a camera to make digital copies of all your documents. IRCC will accept a Word document, PDF, PNG, JPEG, and of course, all the documents need to be 4 megabytes or smaller. Often you will have to combine and compress documents together. So just be mindful of that. You get one spot to upload your proof of finance, and you may have multiple documents that you're putting in there. So just spend some time getting the documents ready before you actually get started. Of course, most importantly is reading the instruction guide. Each country has their own specific requirements for when you apply for a visa to come to Canada. So when you go to the IRCC website, you will click on applying from outside of Canada, pick your country of residency, and then it will send you the specific instruction guide for your country of residency. Next, you're going to prepare the answers in your online tool. So once you have an online account, you'll start your application to come to Canada, and then you will answer some questions about your visit. So you want to study, you want to stay here for more than 6 months, yes, you've been accepted to a DLI, and so on and so forth. Next, it's important to know the fees that you have to pay. Your application fee is $150. And for first-time applicants coming to Canada or for biometrics are good for 10 years. So that would also be an additional $85 for you. So therefore, if you come to Canada in the last 10 years, you have biometrics completed, you would just pay your study permit fee. However, if you've never come to Canada or it's been more than 10 years, then you will pay both those fees within your application. Please also note if you include dependents in your file, there will be additional fees for them. And of course, once you have all these things ready, you're going to create your account and sign in to get started. So when you go to the IRCC website, they'll first send you a link to the IRCC portal, and then you can actually create what's called the GC Key account, which is what you actually will be applying from. So once you actually do that step, you'll go to the far right side where it says sign up, and then you'll start to answer some questions. So you're going to make a username and password. You're going to set up your own security questions and responses. If you're working with a licensed representative like an RCIC or a RISIA, or I guess I should say RCIC, would be doing private consulting, they would likely use their own account to do the application. However, if you are doing your own application, and we don't recommend working with people who are not licensed, you should make your own username and password and keep those questions and login information secure but accessible to you. This account will be used when you come to Canada to do any extensions or eventually to apply for your postgrad work permit. So now, like I said, you're going to gather those documents. We've already talked about the letter of acceptance from Lakehead University. Of course, you can use your conditional offer, as we've mentioned. And we'll go through that in the next few slides, as well as the proof of finance, your passport, the PAL letter, and any country-specific information for you. So of course, first, the letter of acceptance from Lakehead University. If you do have any specific questions about your admission, we've put their contact information here on the slide. But please make important note of your application program. If you have co-op mentioned on that letter of acceptance, when's your due date to make the deposit, start of class dates, all of that is really important information to confirm and check over. So as we've already mentioned, if you have a conditional letter of acceptance, you should still start the study permit process. You will create yourself a letter of explanation or a statement of purpose, an SOP. And in there, you can mention, I, Jennifer, am applying for my study permit. You will see I have a condition of my language test. My language test is booked on January 15th, and here's the confirmation that it's booked. And I will update this file as soon as I have those language test results. So in that scenario, after you've submitted the application, you can use the IRCC web form to send updates and add more documents to your application in progress. So January 15th comes, I take my language test. A couple days later, I get the results. I register for my classes. I send both my enrollment letter and the new language results to IRCC through the web form, and they will then attach that to my application in progress. Because processing is so slow, you need to give yourself, I say, 4 months for the processing to go through before your classes start. So you may not have enough time to wait until you meet conditions to get the process started. So next is the proof of funds. Of course, international students must provide their proof of funds for their first year of tuition. And you also need to include your tuition or living expenses costs. This does increase each year. So now the the living expenses for 1 year would be $22,895 Canadian. And please be mindful, if you're planning to bring your spouse and children, that would be even more funds available than that, along with your tuition fees. You can look at the tuition fee estimator on our website. Of course, Hardika has the link right there in the slide. But please remember, first year of tuition plus 1 year of living expenses, regardless of the length of your program. There are quite a few different documents that you can use as your proof of funds. Of course, we recommend paying your tuition for the first year upfront. This is going to cause a lot less stress for you throughout your first year of studies, allow you to register for all your classes, and also prove to IRCC that you're a serious student with the proof of funds and you actually want to study at Lakehead University. So paying your tuition directly to Lakehead and including that receipt for the full year and your housing fees you can do also in advance is the best proof of funds that you can give in your study permit application. However, you may just have your tuition, your PAL deposit, so a $5,000 payment, and then you would have to accompany that with other sufficient funds. This could be things like your education loan, your bank statements, your GIC from one of the Canadian institutions that you're working with. If your parents are paying your tuition, they provide a letter and they would show their bank statements and so forth. But as I said, I would say the biggest reason for refusal is proof of funds for applicants. So paying your tuition to Lakehead in advance is definitely going to strengthen that application significantly. As I mentioned, you may have multiple documents there as well. So you may have to put a cover letter saying, my name is Jennifer. I want to include all these documents for my proof of funds. Number 1, here's my first year tuition paid up front. Number 2, here's my bank statement showing I have $30,000 Canadian. That's accessible to me. Or here's a letter from my mom and her bank statements as well. So you would have to merge all those documents into one file for your upload. So just be mindful of that. Now moving on to proof of identity, of course, it would be your passport that you would be uploading. You need to make sure that your passport is at least has 6 months validity on it. Please note your study permit cannot be issued longer than the passport. You also likely will want to apply for your post-grad work permit after graduation. So my recommendation is to get a fresh passport, get it issued for 10 years before you start the study visa process if your passport's coming close to expiry. Of course, if you have like 3, 5, 6, 7 years left on your passport, you will be able to renew it within your process. But sometimes it can be really lengthy and expensive to do that with your embassy in Canada. It's very easy usually to update your passport in your home country. So please consider renewing this first.
Okay, so over to me. Thanks, Jen. So we'll continue on with gathering the required documents. So we touched on the PAL a little bit earlier, but just to reiterate, you're going to accept your offer of admission, pay your confirmation of deposit plus PAL if applicable, and complete the PAL request form. This is an email that comes from our international recruitment and enrollment team. If for some reason you don't receive this correspondence, you can reach out to them directly at pal.intl@lakeheadu.ca. We'll put this in the chat for you. Once our PAL team receives your request and all the information looks good, they'll request your PAL from the Canadian government. And once they receive it, they will send it directly to you. This process isn't too lengthy. Usually it takes about a week or so, so that's good. And then, of course, you're going to submit your PAL and acceptance letter together as part of your study permit application, along with everything else that we're talking about. And again, as mentioned earlier, if you are a master's or PhD student and you're submitting your application on or after January 1st of 2026, you will not require the provincial attestation letter. So next, Jen touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's really important for applications outside of Canada. They're assessed by the visa offices. So each country has their own requirements in addition to the documents we explained earlier. So sometimes there's some additional documents that may be required. So on the IRCC website, you can find the application package that is specific to your country. And again, like Jen said, you're going to use the drop-down menu. You will select where you're applying from outside of Canada, select your country of residence, and after this, you will get a document. Looks similar to the example that Hartika has put on the screen. You'll have a document checklist and visa instruction guide, which can be downloaded. And so it's really important to do this as one of your first steps so you're fully aware of what's required based on your country of residence. So next, with your study permit application, if you're from a visa required country, you will get your temporary resident visa. That's a counterfoil, it's a sticker in your passport. So you will receive a passport request, also sometimes called a PPR, to submit your passport for visa stamping. Usually you have 30 days from receiving this letter to submit your passport for stamping. Your visa is your travel document, which you need to enter Canada. So keep that in mind. The visa is your entry and travel document that lets you come in and out of Canada. If you happen to be from a visa exempt country, you may need an ETA or an electronic travel authorization. And so that one's a little bit different, where the ETA is usually valid until the expiry date of your passport and is automatic with your study permit application. So when IRCC approves your study permit application, they will issue you the ETA, and in most cases, you don't need to actually apply for it. Okay, so just a little bit about biometrics. IRCC is currently collecting biometrics, and so you'll pay the biometrics fee with your application, and they will send you a biometric instruction letter. This letter confirms that you will require them, and it's just important, again, to follow the steps on the letter carefully and visit the VAT closest to you for collection. So next, medical exams could also be required, and depending on your country of citizenship and program of study. If you're going to study or work in the healthcare field or childcare field or that vulnerable people sector, we recommend that you complete the medical prior to coming to Canada, and then you can include it with your study permit application. Medicals can be done in advance if you know they're required. You just need to be sure that the medical is done by an IRCC panel physician. That's very important. And a list can be found on their website. You can search your region for which offices or clinics have a panel physician. Again, be sure to follow the instructions in the medical request letter if you receive this from IRCC, and complete the requirement before the deadline indicated. Anytime IRCC requests things, there's usually always a deadline attached to that, and it's extremely important to submit the requested documents within that deadline. So a little bit about co-op work permits. So co-ops are work integrated learning that might be part of your degree studies, and for some, it might be a mandatory component of your program. So co-op positions are usually approved by Lakehead after your first year or your first 2 semesters. And again, this depends on your specific program. And so once you're here, our department will hold workshops on campus and over Zoom to assist any students that need to apply for the co-op work permit, because sometimes you don't know this when you're initially applying for your study permit. We can also do one-on-one meetings with you to support you with this application. This application is free when you do it here. Not much is free these days, but the co-op work permit is free. So please rest assured that we can help you apply for this after you arrive to Canada. You may want to include applying for it in your initial study permit, which is fine. You'll have to highlight that section in your letter of acceptance to show that a co-op is a component of it if it outlines that specifically in your letter of acceptance. So just keep that in mind, but perfectly fine to apply for it after you come if needed. Okay, so we'll move on to working in Canada. So as an international student, if you're registered with the institution full-time and you have the working conditions outlined on your study permit, you will be able to work part-time while you study, which is important for many of our students. This part-time work can offset some of the costs associated, things like rent and food and miscellaneous expenses. But please note this part-time work will not be able to fund your entire tuition fees that were reflected in your study permit application. So please plan accordingly to have your finances for your tuition and your major living expenses already in place so that you're not looking at just part-time work to try and support yourself. We have a career services center that can assist you after you arrive. They can review your resume, help you do a cover letter, help you with job searching, interview prep, and anything to do with this work. And so there's lots of supports available to help you get started if you're interested in working while you study. And then on the flip side, the other work in Canada, of course, is after you graduate. And so many of our students choose to stay in Canada after graduation. And providing you've met all the criteria, you'll be eligible for the postgraduate work permit program. So for our undergraduate students, as long as your program is at least 2 years in length, you will be eligible for a 3-year work permit. And for our graduate level students, as long as your program is at least 8 months or more in length, you will be eligible to apply for the 3-year PGWP. And one sort of new requirement is that international students applying for the PGWP will be required to submit an updated language proficiency with their application. Again, this is something you will do down the road before you graduate, but something to just sort of keep on your radar that it is a newer requirement. And of course, we'll help you through all of this process with applying for your PGWP. So processing times, as Jen mentioned, they can be lengthy. You can track your application through your IRCC account. The processing times will vary country to country. This you can see an example on the screen. IRCC will send you notifications anytime they make a change or an update to your application. So please make sure you're keeping a close eye on your emails and logging into your account and checking for updates very frequently. And that's why we say it's really important to apply early to avoid any delays in starting your studies, as many countries are taking quite a long time. And even when it says 4 weeks, depending on individual situations, it can take longer. So application decisions. So hopefully, fingers crossed, you will get an approved application, and then you'll be asked to send your passport for stamping. An approval message will be sent to that GC Key account. And please just simply read and follow the instructions carefully. And then when you come to Canada, when you travel to Canada, as Jen said, you will get that physical study permit at the port of entry. So please make sure when you arrive at the port of entry, you are going through customs, you are getting your study permit, and you are checking your study permit over carefully before you leave to make sure everything is accurate and correct. In the instance, hopefully not, but if you receive a refusal and you decide that you want to ask for consideration or reapply, you can do that. Please, it's feel free to reach out to us if you do receive a refusal. We can help to sort of guide you on next steps and what that might look like and what your options are. You'll now receive more detailed notes on your refusal letter. They're called ODN, or Officer's Decision Notes. This never used to be included, but it's included now. And it gives you more details on why the officer refused your application so that you can better understand what you can do next time. And so if you're doing a reapplication, you do need to address those refusal reasons and strengthen that application for that. One other important note is that if you receive a refusal, you may need a new PAL. Again, this depends on your program, the timeline, the situation. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us for clarification, but likely you will need a PAL if you needed one with your original application. And if you had registered for any courses at Lakehead, please make sure you drop them before the drop deadline to receive a full tuition refund. If your refusal comes in, you aren't able to make it for that particular intake that you applied for. So a little bit about dependents of the principal applicant. Some of our students may wish to bring their spouses and or children with them to Canada. And so when we're referring to the spousal open work permits, as per current IRCC policy, only students in master's or PhD programs will be able to apply for their spouses to have an open work permit. Of course, this is providing you meet all the necessary criteria, which includes for master's or PhD, a program of 16 months or more in length. If you're an undergraduate student, the spousal open work permit is likely not available to you. However, there are a limited number of programs that are eligible for the spousal open work permit. So you will want to review that list if you're in that situation and you're interested in applying for a dependent to come with you. You can apply to have your children come to Canada or your spouse come to Canada. Sorry, you can apply for your children to come to Canada with you either as a visitor or if they're of school age as a student. And if they're of school age, you should apply for a study permit for them. And you can do that along with your application. You can include your family members in your original application to come to Canada, or you can invite them after you arrive. Some students prefer to come, get settled, and then invite them to come to Canada and have them apply for their permits afterwards. The option is yours. So I think that's it for me, and I will pass it off to Hartika to finish things up.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you, for that informative, details about how to apply for a visa. Now that wraps up the presentation part. Let's just shift our focus to Q&A. Please drop in your questions in the Q&A box below, and our team will help answer those. So, Jennifer, I can see there's...
I probably can take all three of these on here. So what's the minimum bank statements to show for the study permit? How many months? So as I mentioned, you don't have to show bank statements. There's a various amount of documents that you can apply. I would say if I'm doing bank statements, 6 months bank statements to show the activity and show the funds are sitting there is probably what you should be putting in. Yeah. And you having a sponsor. So furthermore, my bank statement is 1 month plus. So again, I would say if you have a sponsor, they're going to write a letter saying this is how they know you or their relationship to you. And this is how much they're going to cover of your studies, and they're going to show their proof of funds. So their bank statements and so forth. Again, this can get a little bit messy when you have somebody else who's supporting you with your tuition. So as I've mentioned numerous times, pay the tuition up front for the year. Then it shows that you're serious. It definitely strengthens the application and your proof of funds. If for some reason your application is refused, you are entitled to a refund with that. So just so you know. Rena, we tried to get the questions into the Q&A, but just so you know, if the PAL has the wrong address on it, you can still use it to apply for your study visa application. It does not need to match. However, we recommend that everything matches. So your letter of acceptance, your PAL letter, and your study visa application should all have the same address on it. So please be very mindful. Make sure you update that with your LOA and so forth, or with admissions before you request your PAL letter.
One more in the chat here. If I decide to bring my family at a later stage, will the application process for their visas be different? No, because they're still applying from their home country. So it's the same application. It's just you're not including it along with yours, but the same requirements apply because they're applying from their home country.
Yeah, you'd still have your proof of relationship in there, so birth certificates or marriage certificate. The only different thing really is that now you'll have an enrollment letter. So you should show that you're registered for your classes or your transcript to show in progress, along with their application.
Okay. If anyone else has any questions, now is the time. Oh, I think there is one. Jen, you want to answer that?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, lots of times parents will come to Canada with you and come to just kind of help you get settled or maybe come visit while you're studying. They can apply for a visitor visa. Anyone can apply for a visitor visa to come to Canada. So they would not be included in your application. Your dad is not a dependent of you. He would do his own application and say, hey, I want to visit my son who's studying. He'd show his own proof of funds, his own ties to the home country within his application there. And usually once you get a visitor visa for Canada, they'll stamp the passport for up to 10 years. So then your father can come and go and visit you within that time period and stay for up to 6 months at a time.
Yeah, so there was a question about how does the process of working with I think they mean RCIC work. And so as we said, if you're not doing the application yourself, and you're working with an agent or someone that's doing the application for you, you want to ensure that they are a licensed immigration consultant or advisor. So that would be an RCIC. So in order to determine that, you can ask them. So you'll obviously know their name. They will have a license number, just like us. You can look them up through the College of Immigration Consultants to make sure that they are in good standing. And then you can feel confident with using them to submit your application on your behalf, to make sure that it will be a successful application and make sure that they're doing everything correct. So that's really important.
Yeah, and just on to the next one. So I see you've already submitted your application and you put 4 months bank statements. That should not be an issue. That's still enough time to show the history of the applications. I think like minimum of 3 months bank statements is probably the minimum you should put in. So I don't expect any issues for you that you had 4 instead of 6 in there.
Mhm. Yeah, and Vincent, it doesn't really matter who you're using for your sponsor. If your brother is sponsoring your education, that's fine. You just need to make sure that you're providing the necessary proof of finance. And so, as Jen said, that would be a letter from your sponsor explaining who they are, the relationship, and how they are going to support you. And then you would be required to provide their financial documents as the financial proof.
And so, yeah, just to be very clear, even if you have an Empower loan, you still need to pay your deposit to accept your offer and for your PAL letter. So, yes, 100% you still need to do that. Sorry, Sarah.
That's okay. I'll just jump in really quick. Just one more that came in. It says, does Lakehead University have RCICs that are available? So we do not assist with out-of-country initial study permit applications. We can answer some general questions and help guide you, but we don't do that part of it. You'll be responsible to apply for that yourself or find an RCIC.
Yeah, if you follow that country-specific guide and information, you really should, it's quite simple to submit the application. Just look through the steps on the IRCC website, log into your account, get those documents ready, and then, of course, go through your country-specific guide just to make sure that if there's anything specific that's needed for your country, you're capturing that.
Yeah. And when talking about finances, more is better. If you're just providing the bare minimum of things, again, like Jen said, the most common refusal point that we see is proof of funds not being sufficient, or the officer is not convinced that you'll be able to financially support yourself. So again, paying for your full year of tuition up front, giving more than the minimum requirement shown to support yourself. So they want to see that you have those funds available to pay for your education while you're in Canada, as well as living, which can be expensive, rent and food and everything else, right? So more is better in that, and strong ties to your home country, showing the officer that you will leave Canada after your studies.
And yeah, if you have a scholarship, Jason, you can include this within your proof of funds. Say, for example, I'm accepted. I got the entrance scholarship of $8,000. Tuition is, say, for example, $30,000. So I would show $22,000 paid, plus I got the scholarship coming through, plus I have my living expenses covered. So it can be included with your proof of funds, but it's definitely not enough to show your proof of funds for your school year. Also, just a reminder to any student here who has the entrance scholarship, be mindful of your requirements to keep that scholarship. Please make sure you register full-time according to your scholarship requirements, and to keep your GPA up, because it can be devastating if you get into your second year and start to lose that scholarship. So please read the terms and conditions with your scholarship acceptance right away and make sure you understand them clearly.
Yeah. And once you lose your scholarship, you do not get it back. So it's not like, oh, I'll bring my average up the next year and get it back. When you lose it, you lose it. So please plan for that.
And sorry, Vincent, I did see a question in the chat. So just so you know, a study permit, study visa application is the same thing from outside of Canada. You're technically, we call it study permit because you actually get a permit when you come into Canada, but you're actually applying for your visa. So in Canada, you'll apply, make sure you say you want to study for more than 6 months in that first set of questions. And then once the application is approved, they will ask you to send your passport to the visa office. So they will actually give you a visa stamping in your passport, and that stamping is used just to enter the country. I know Sarah's already kind of talked about this. And then when you actually enter at the port of entry is when you get that permit, which I showed in my very first slide there. So it's all kind of one application that you do together. So it's not a separate application. The visa gets stamped in the home country, and the permit will be issued when you arrive in Canada. Hope that clarifies that for you.
When your study visa application is approved, you'll get what's called a letter of introduction. And that's what you'll print and bring with you and show you to customs to say, I was approved, and they will use that to then give you your physical study permit.
Hey, so with that, just brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much for joining, and a big thank you to our immigration advisors for their guidance. Remember, our International Student Services team is here to support you through the entire process from admission to arrival and also beyond. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and we wish you all for the best of your applications, and we hope to see you soon at Lakehead.
Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section below. You can connect with us on social media. You can find us at Lakehead International on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We hope to see you in our next live webinar. Bye for now.